Yay. So I'm recording. I was in a group this week and I played the recording from last Sunday night for that group. And of course that was it was an emotional one. I was going to say a heavy one. I don't want to think of it that way, but it was a feeling one for sure. I was feeling lots of things. We were feeling lots of things. And then the person said later, boy, if that's what goes on Sunday nights, no wonder I don't go. And I said, well, it's not what usually goes on. um, don't want to scare anybody off. And I also don't want to not be real and vulnerable. One thing I've been thinking about lately is I haven't had a lot of friends or even family, close people who have passed. But I've had a few. And because I haven't been kind of first degree in that, all of that, it felt like those people kind of, they didn't retreat, but they kind of faded away in a way. It's kind of the way I think it goes with illness and death. It's not just because we're not feeling good, although that's one reason why that happens. But one reason is because of how comfortable or uncomfortable the culture is with illness and death. And I know that there are people out there who feel like somehow it's incumbent on the ill person to protect other people from other people seeing them unwell. They don't want to make them uncomfortable. And I think I've made the decision to do all I can to stay in touch in whatever way that means. And I'm lucky to have this sort of outlet where people can see my face, where people can hear my voice. And I also would like to make an impact on the culture around illness and death, meaning that it doesn't have to be scary and we don't have to be afraid. And I have been quoting this book, The Grace in Dying, where she spends the whole first paragraph telling us that we're safe, that there's nothing dangerous happening. It's safe. And that's how I want to portray my process. So I have a few books that I'm looking at right now, and I'm going to be using two books on Sunday nights to share and to practice with. And one of them is this book by Ram Dass, Mirabai Bush and Ram Dass, called Walking Each Other Home. And the other one is called A Year to Live by Stephen Levine. And he's a long-term, I don't know if he ever called himself a death doula, but he journeyed with people across the threshold of death and wrote a lot of books about death. And in that book, A Year to Live, it's really about imagining that we all only have 1 year left to live. And so I'm going to be inviting this group to ponder the possibility of walking that path with me. So it's not a book that is literally about physical dying necessarily. It certainly can be used that way, and I'll be using it that way. But primarily what it is about loosening the attachment of the ego and the relaxation of all of our attachments to who we think we are, what we think life is, what it means to be alive, what it means to be ill, what it means to be dying. And that we travel this next year together asking a lot of questions, these types of questions. So I want to ask you this question to start with. If you had only 1 year to live, what would you do? And I'm sure the list could go on and on and on. But really listen deeply to yourself for a moment, and I'll listen deeply to myself. If I only had 1 year left to live, what would I do? So I'm going to invite us to have one of those nights where we share. And I'm going to invite us to share pretty quickly, to not make a big story or give a lot of context, and to pay attention to maybe the first thing that popped into your head about what you would do if you only had 1 year to live. I'll invite some of us to be brave and unmute. And if something came to your head, Janet, to jump in.
It was a two-part statement. The first part was I would travel. And the second part was I would travel to all my friends and family, and I would tell them so openly how much I love them and how I see them, like how I see them, just how magnificent and wonderful they are. Not in flattery, but in truth.
Ditto.
I was going to say I would love my loved ones as deeply and wholly and completely as I could. Yeah. And then my second part was then I would write alongside it.
And unmute, please, Luke. Marcia, you want to go while Luke is looking?
All right.
Or I can maybe unmute.
My first thought, my first thought was I wouldn't do anything very differently than what I'm doing, but I would do it more carefully, with more care and tenderness and awareness, with more awareness, I think. Yeah, which would include all my relationships. Yes.
Oh, Luke, somehow you got muted again. There you go.
How about now? Okay. So the first thing that popped into my head was that right after this meditation, I'm going to paint. I've been putting it off, and I'm not putting it off tonight.
Yana? Oh,
I too
Francie.
yeah, I don't think I would change much of what I'm doing. What perhaps would shift is maybe telling fear to pay, to just take a back seat.
You get less fearful if you only have a year to live. Oddly. That's how it goes. Diana?
For me, what came is immediately to meditate so much more and to really like the strange phase of upping my game in that regard, like, you know, to prep for the next stage a lot more. So that's a, should probably take that to heart already.
Yeah. Mark?
I think the word that came to me most was connection, maintaining your tight connections, and then honesty and expressing verbally what those connections mean to those folks. Instead of being fearful about what they're going to think of me, just let it out there.
Yeah, we hear that less fear coming in again. We're less fearful of what people are going to think if we only have a year to live. And we'll notice, of course, that we're a spiritual group, and that part of the reason why we're here is that, in a sense, we're all preparing. We're either preparing for death, in a sense, or we're preparing for transformation, enlightenment. That's what we're doing here. So the practices are already here, but as you guys are saying, they get deepened, they get more attention paid to them. And one thing that I noticed that I am doing, so I must have made this choice, is I look out the window a lot more and don't do anything else. I still get up pretty frequently, but I don't feel like I need to be somewhere else. I feel like looking at the view out the window is enough. And that's something I don't generally feel is just doing this simple thing that looks very unproductive is the thing to do. I'm going to read a little bit from this book. First, he says, when I asked that question, what would you do? He said, we spin through the full range of our fantasies from orgies to monasteries and back again. Well, the orgies thing did not pop into my head at all, but monasteries do, of course. That's always will be a fantasy of us spiritual nerds, the monastery. So the question really becomes, how do we stay alive each day? It's really what we're talking about. And as we reflect on this question, we become surprised at how many options it actually inspires. And we realize that rather than our freedom being curtailed by having just a year left, we uncover something quite unsuspecting and satisfying. We discover how much more room we have for life and how many more possibilities there are to be fully alive. And one thing we become aware of is how much of our time we spend not really alive, not really present to our life, not really here for our life, which is the definition of being alive, is to be here for our life. So we ask all the questions that we might be able to do. We may decide we need to start a new job. We may decide we need to quit a job. We may decide we need to partner up. We may decide we need to unpartner. We may decide we need to get religion or get rid of a religion. There are infinite options, but what most of us decide to do is just keep living our life and begin listening more deeply to our heart. I loved hearing those comments about less fear. That means we're listening less to our ego and our mind. So to have a whole year to examine one's life consciously in the context of approaching death is almost unique in the human experience. It gives a person the power to heal that which remains unloved in us and that which remains unloving in us. The power to heal that. Hopefully, we're going to get into the difference between healing that and changing that. Healing that just allows us to be with those things. We don't see it as anything wrong with ourselves anymore. We don't have to get better. We don't have to fix ourselves. We just have to recognize that there are parts in ourselves that are still unloved. And there are still parts of ourselves that are still unloving. So why wait for a terminal diagnosis before opening to the potential grace and wonder of this living moment? And with that, let's practice together and be in this moment together. And in this moment together, to recognize that we are in love. That we have already felt love, heard love, in the voices coming through our computer screens. We've seen love in the faces. And we can also trust that love is completely present with us wherever we are. That there has not been one moment in our life when we have been separated from love. That's a lie that we have believed. And I vow that I will no longer believe that. There will never be a moment in my life that I'm separate from love. And in the space of love, simply noticing your own experience. Simply noticing whatever is happening for you now. And when you notice your experience, naming it silently to yourself. To be able to name any experience in our body, our heart, our mind requires that we are present in the moment, and therefore we are alive. We are here for that experience. So beginning to feel our aliveness. And then noticing that in our body. And as we attend to each part of our body, noticing the aliveness of our feet. And our legs. The aliveness in our hips, our pelvis, and our belly. the aliveness of our chest. And in the beating of our heart. Noticing the aliveness in our shoulders, arms, and our hands. Noticing the aliveness in our back, our spine, our neck, our head, and our face. Noticing the sensation of our body as one whole physical being here now in all its aliveness, no matter the state of our health. Remaining grounded in the body, noticing the spiritual aspect of ourself. Noticing the part of ourself that is this different kind of aliveness, that is this leaping spirit part of us. It's an energy, it's a vibration, it's a flow. No matter how fatigued you might be in this minute or how your body might feel, that alive spiritual energy is present in you. See if you can touch it. And then the aliveness of our being and our beingness coming into contact with the aliveness and beingness of the earth. And particularly experiencing that in the way gravity is drawing us down deep into the earth. It's acting upon us so that we are a part of it. And it's holding us. It's holding us so that we don't have to hold ourselves. So as that statement funnels through our awareness and comes to be felt as true, I don't have to hold myself. I begin to relax. I give myself over to the holding of love. Now staying with our aliveness in this holding, observe the breath. Observe the alive energy in the breath. Both the in-breath and the out-breath, just so full of life. So full of this natural flow of receiving and letting go. And with each out breath, letting yourself sink a little more deeply into holding, into surrender. Until you come to a place where you feel your beingness completely letting go, completely surrendering into a space of simple being. In love. Mm. This is the preparation that we need for living and for dying. Preparation is to be present for life, for all of our moments, and to not hold on to anything, not to cling, so that each next new moment can arise. Thank you so much for practicing with me and supporting my own practice. Love you all.